Absolutely.
And it's not little cancer, it's serious cancer,
No.
isn't it?
End stage, yep.
End stage. And so what I want to ask you, Terry, what would you say to someone who says, how comes your God doesn't just cure you instantly? Doesn't that make your God look bad? How would you respond to that as you're facing a serious situation here?
Hey, thanks. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to share. As Kevin said, my name's Terry Russo. I go here to Capstone. Was not raised in a Christian home. Had some touches of Christianity in my life. I call them links in a chain God used to pull me to himself. But it wasn't, I wasn't out looking for God, and circumstances happened, and I ended up wanting to know more about God out of my own brokenness. I was about to get married and had no religious affinity really, but my parents were divorced, my wife's family was divorced, and everybody was broken in our families. And we knew what we didn't want, which was another broken marriage. So we sought out counsel from, happened to be a Christian pastor, and everything just made sense to us. It just clicked in our heads. And from that moment forward, we started to turn our thinking and the way we looked at the world changed a little bit. And we had a new backdrop of understanding about creation and the world and our role as being created in the image of God. And one of the things that cancer has helped me understand is that God doesn't desire any of the disease or the darkness or the things that occur in this world. That wasn't part of his original plan. Some of you may know, some of you may not, that originally, God had a close relationship with mankind, walked in the garden with him every day. And because of man's choice to not trust God and want to be more independent and have their own way, it broke the relationship. And God has spent the next 5,000 years reaching out to his creation, wanting them back. And when you understand that all that is broken in this world is not ultimately God's fault, but he's taken the responsibility of restoration after we, as humans, rejected God just by saying we can be our own gods, we can make our own decisions, we don't need to have a higher power. Getting to my cancer, it started out with just weird circumstances. My appendix burst and went in for, they misdiagnosed it. I had it for a week. I was walking around with a ruptured appendix. Instead of it seeping into my body and killing me, it created this big abscess, and they found it with a CAT scan, and they drained it out, and I was in ICU. When they drained it, it leaked. It did leak, and then I couldn't eat. When I was able to take food in again, I couldn't swallow. They sent me down for endoscopy, and sure enough, I have esophageal cancer. Didn't know I had it. So the original pain and disruption through the a ruptured appendix ended up being the thing that caught the cancer. So I went into therapy right away, chemo, radiation, and then within 4 months I was in surgery, took out my esophagus, did what they call a gastric pull through, where they take your stomach, reshape it, put it up into your throat. And then during that surgery, they discovered that I still had cancer. The way I envisioned it and the way they explained it to me was, if you considered cancer like residents living in your esophagus and the surrounding tissues, they were going to hit me with chemo and radiation, try to kill all the residents. And then they were going to go in and take out the village just to make sure that they got everything. But when they went in to take out the village, still had a bunch of residents in there. So they took out everything they could find, and then I went right back into treatment because they knew that if the chances are, if there was stuff in there, that that they were still kicking around. So I went 14 months with clean CT scans. Everything looked good. Everything was working. The surgery was, the functioning of my esophagus and my new way of processing food and everything was all working out as it was supposed to. But at Christmas time, I found out that, the scan came back and the cancer was back. Not as a tumor, not as like more spots that were showing cancerous. It came back as it's kind of like a microscopic cancer bloom. So instead of being like a spot that they could target, it was infiltrating my system, especially my lungs, in the liner of the lungs, and it was and what they consider like an end stage, like what cancer does at the end when it metastasizes and like starts to spread everywhere. So that's kind of what happened to me. It kind of spread everywhere, and so my family, who'd been 14 months thinking, hey, good, then we had to deal with, not so good. But the whole time I had already, because they had given me only 50-50 chance when I began this whole process. My whole experience was, at this point, I'd been a Christian for 30 years. I spent 30 years trying to have a closer relationship with Christ. So the whole time I'm thinking, I'm not going to balk about the opportunity to be closer to that's my goal. That's my treasure. That's what I've been moving towards. And so when you can disconnect your anchor from this world and what we normally think are important, and not that those things aren't important, they are. I love my family. My kids still rely on me. I'm still a big part of their lives. My wife, all those things are still very important to me. But I released my anchors from this world when I became a Christian and anchored them into a spiritual life that I've been grooming and trying to build. Not perfectly, because, I'm just a man. And I fell and fell short many times. But that was my desire, was to have a closer walk. So the cancer has given me the opportunity to reconnect those attachments to my spiritual life. Hasn't disconnected me from this physical world. I'm still in love with God's creation down here. I would still love to be able to spend more time here. And if God does that, I joke around, the doctors, they've diagnosed me, and they give me 6 months to maybe 2 years even. They're going to try to keep treating me with chemo to try to keep it at bay. They can't stop it, but they can slow it down, they say, maybe. But my whole point was that didn't matter to me whether it was 6 months or 2 years, or if God kept me around for 20 years. The end result is the same for all of us. We're all not here to stay. We're all going to be eventually passing on out of this life. The question really is, what happens then? And I know for myself that having turned and made my focus as much about what God wanted for me as what this world or this system had to offer. And there's a lot of things it does offer that are great. Like I said, I love my family. I love creation. I love fishing and kayaking and riding motorcycles. A lot of things I enjoy in this world. But I know God has something even more precious than any of those things. And when I get to see that fully, right now we don't have a clear understanding of exactly what life will be like outside of what the Bible gives us, the explanations and the descriptions. But I'm excited to whatever God has next for me. Corrie ten Boom, many of you don't know her. She was a World War II person that was in concentration camp and Ravensbrück. And she always said there's no pit deeper that yet God's love and grace is not deeper still. So no matter how dark life may seem, if you have this connection to the Creator, He has a deeper and greater support system that goes beyond the deepest and darkest things that can happen in our life. So the way I look at my cancer is it's my cancer. It's what has allowed, and it's fit for me. I wouldn't want it on anybody else. Matter of fact, I've looked around and said, is there anybody else that would be able to take this burden? And I don't see anybody, I wouldn't want anybody else to have it. It's my burden. It's fit for me. And God has equipped me with this next level of understanding. And I'm as best prepared as anybody that I know to deal with my particular cancer. And I'm excited about what God's going to do next, and including, that he could heal me. I joke around, the doctor says around the wall, they're only practicing medicine. And they tell me straight up, we don't really know, what your outcome is going to be. They have their experiences. They've been practicing medicine for years. So they have their best bet. And I'm following whatever they say. I'm going to do whatever they tell me to do. And but I'm kind of like a pawn in this game, The doctors, God has ultimate control. Either way, I don't have a lot to say other than I trust my Creator that he is going to supply the needs that my family needs if I'm not here. And he's going to supply me with the strength I need at the time. Even if I have a rough landing, I say, even if this is a pretty miserable end as I lose my ability to take in oxygen, it's a rough landing, but it's the destination that's important to me at this point. We're all on this road trip of life, and there's a lot of exciting things to see and do, but every trip we go on, talking to my pilot friend, it's about the destination. If you don't get to the destination on your trip, then, what was the trip all about? And I'm excited about the destination. And I'm still excited about the trip because God's still unfolding things. This cancer has given me opportunities to share with my doctors, my nurses, my therapists, my friends, because I'm all set with it. I'm good to go, and I'm good to stay. Because I'm not connected to my circumstances anymore. And that's one of the blessings that becoming a Christian has changed how you gauge the value of everything, including your own life. It puts it in perspective, and it gives you some freedoms to trust. And people have trust issues. I had trust issues. And it's given me a whole new set of abilities and tools that I would have never been able to obtain through just the experiences you have on earth. This new spiritual connection has given me an opportunity to rise not above my circumstances, but just the weight of the circumstances are no longer a drag or a pull on me, because I know God is still in control, and if he's gonna allow me to go home with him, then the role that I played, he'll raise up somebody else to take that role. And as far as my kids, he's a better dad than I ever will be. So I trust him for even that. And as far as my wife, he's a better husband. He's a better would have been for my wife. So I'm excited. And if anybody out there is wondering, what's the difference? What is it? Why should I consider faith? Because it's the only thing that God has given us that can't be taken from you. You may love your spouse or your kids or your family or whatever, but none of those things are guaranteed for another day. You could be in a car accident, or your family member could. And if I'd said to you, list the 3 things that are most important to you. And if God isn't the number one thing, any of those things you listed can be taken from you at any given time. Not by your choice, but just by circumstances. A relationship with God can't be taken. That is an eternal choice that sets the direction for your whole eternity. And when you have that security of knowing that there's something else outside of this world that you can connect with that ensures you a future, no matter what the circumstances. It made sense to me when I was in my 20s and I had no religious connection. It made sense to me then. And now as I'm getting ready possibly to depart, it is an anchor that is unrelenting. It holds me together during hopefully what's not too difficult of a time. But even if it is difficult, it's one that can't be broken. So my encouragement to you out there is go ahead and test God. Say to him, never had a reason or a thought to believe in you, but if you're out there, I'm open to the thought of you being real. And believe me, he's going to make that more evident to you. You just keep your eyes open. You ask God to make himself available or show himself to you, and then you just open up your spiritual eyes and see what comes into your life, because he is faithful to answer that prayer. Anybody out there that cries out and says, God, I don't know if you're real, but if you are, show me somehow. You can look outside and see the stars and the moon and the sun and say, there looks like there's an intelligent design behind this whole world. That'd be one thing you could maybe look at differently. But he's going to reach out in spiritual ways. He's going to put somebody in your life. You're going to hear something on the TV or the radio. You're going to bump into somebody that shares something with you, and it starts to make sense and click. And then at some point, it becomes real to you. And when it does, the veil's lifted and you look at the whole world differently. Not from a position of, I'm in this creation, to a position of, I'm in this creation and I kind of understand how it works now and who the creator is. And his longing is to be in that relationship again with those who he created. And so that's my my praise to my God that he opened my eyes, and it's my prayer for everyone out there that they just give God that same chance to show you what he showed me over 30 years ago, that he's real and he wants to connect and he loves his creation. He gives us the freedom to choose our own path because he's a gentleman. He's not going to force you into a relationship with him. But those who call on his name, he's faithful and just to call you his own. So thanks for the time. If anybody out there has questions about death or cancer or want to hear more, I'd be glad to speak to you about my experiences. And I guess I'll leave it at that. God bless, and thanks very much for the time.